A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Kanchi Shah, and I head the business vertical for strategy out of the EMEA markets. It gives me immense pleasure in welcoming you all today to the Connected CIO webinar, themed around accelerating to a connected future. I welcome you on behalf of Dell Technologies, Intel, and Strategy. Ladies and gentlemen, the year 2020 has underpinned the future of technology and forced businesses to transform digitally in ways that would normally have taken years to accomplish. For nearly a year, most of us are at home, using various unified communication tools and other technologies to stay in touch with family and colleagues. Businesses have been transforming digitally at speed to survive. Organizations are now investing in and adopting solutions built around multi cloud, edge computing, the explosion in data and data management, the modernization of networking and built out of 5G, AI, machine learning, and security. And the discussion in today's episode will revolve around multi cloud and software defined processes and intelligence. With these as the drivers, we'd like to kick off today's session. And this with the launch of the 2021 report on accelerating to a connected future. I'd now like to welcome Mr. Arjun Vishwanathan, the Chief Research Officer at Strategy, to please take us through the intention, methodology, and key findings of this report. Over to you, Arjun.
Hello, and I'm Arjun Vishwanathan. I'm going to be your host today. And as I welcome you to an absolutely gorgeous day today, it falls upon me to launch and to introduce you to a fairly serious piece of industry research that we conducted in association with our partners at Dell Technology. And as a culmination of months of painstaking effort and deep industry research, I'm pleased to present to you the 2021 report on what we call Accelerating to a Connected Future, which is fundamentally a study of Indian industry's evolution in adopting emerging technologies for value acceleration. Over the course of the next 5 minutes, I'm going to show you snippets of results from our report. At the outset, I would like to thank our partners, Dell Technologies, for sponsoring and partnering us in driving this very, very deep industry research. Now, the question that begs consideration is why the research was conducted in the first place. In September of 2020, Mr. Michael Dell clearly came out amongst many, many other facets of the economic outlook for 2021 and beyond. One of the things that Mr. Dell spoke about were 6 key technologies that, in his view and in his perspective and his rich experience, would be the accelerators of Indian industry as well as global industries, acceleration to value and to becoming connected enterprises and intelligent enterprises of the future. Those 6 technologies were edge computing, 5G, artificial intelligence and machine learning, the whole concepts of multi-cloud orchestration and architecture, software-defined networking, and data management. Now, while, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not really going to focus on each of these technologies because most of it is obviously fairly evident to you. It is interesting, however, to note that Mr. Dell clearly articulated this in such supreme fashion when he said there's a great speeding up going on, and many individuals are calling it the great acceleration. This particular interview in its literary form is available on the internet, and you can please kindly feel free to read through what is really a fascinating set of conversations that Mr. Dell had. Moving on, amongst the very many questions that we asked about technology and its overall convergence with business strategy, we asked organizations, CFOs, CEOs, CIOs, and other eminent corner office leaders about their drivers or their reasons for adopting innovation as a business strategy. Because innovation, I think, over the last 16 odd months has truly been one of those imperatives that has driven organizations on to more intelligence as well as more resilience. And when we ask them why innovation would be so critical in the months and the years to come. Uh, I'm not surprised at all that 39% of organizations said that innovation would help them drive better customer relationships and outcomes, which is fundamentally increased loyalty, increased wallet share, retention of customers, and so on and so forth. Very, very important, as is evident from the fact that the digital customer of today is very different from the customers that we were about 2 years back. Because each customer today, as a digital customer in this digital economy, seems and is expectant of very, very diverse experiences from brands that he or she associates with. Equally important was better returns, which is fundamentally business returns and business metrics, which are improved margins from improved products and services. The third priority that organizations spoke to us about from the perspective of leveraging innovation was to be able to drive higher competitiveness. And of course, the business agility that is so, so imperative to quickly respond to market opportunities. No surprises on number four as a priority was that organizations expected that innovation would drive and craft the ability for employees to be far, far more productive by perhaps even engaging in new roles and new digital skills that were hitherto not available. And of course, the last priority, or in its ranking at 24%, was improved business intelligence, something that we've been speaking about when we speak about the intelligent enterprises of tomorrow, with data as the base foundational pillar for organizations to drive resilient intelligence and resilient insights. Moving forward, as we went deeper within industry, spoke to tons of folks around the whole concept of, if innovation were to be so critical, what would equally and subsequentially be the urgency and the enthusiasm to adopt these six technologies in their ability to power innovation, craft resilience, and build truly the future intelligent enterprises of tomorrow. We went and asked them their priorities on how they would deploy technology. And it comes as no surprise that one out of almost two, at 47%, data management was one of the most important and prioritized technologies that organizations would deploy within the next 6 months, for the simple reason that as organizations are generating more data, its judicious management as a means of such growth is considered potent to be able to drive an insights based and actionable acceleration towards hyper competitiveness and differentiation. And therefore, data management, given the vast amounts of data that we are generating today, came in at number one. And a close number two was multi cloud for its simple and most basic ability to help organizations craft hyper speed as well as hyper scale and transform workloads while providing for infra as well as app modernization. Came in at 40%. At number three was artificial intelligence and machine learning. No surprises here, because as AI and ML adoption embraces end-to-end thinking and consisting of architectural principles over siloed solutions, the convergence of data management as well as AI ML becomes critical and very, very potent as a tool for organizations to be able to drive vastly differential outcomes. At number four came in software defined networking, with its promise of simplifying and centralizing control of the enterprise network management domain as a whole. Uh, 5G, with all its promise of lower latencies and a facilitation of increased access to information on the go, came in at number five at 19% of respondents saying this would be priority number five. Was closely linked to edge computing, which came in at 18% of respondents saying they would focus on edge computing over the next 6 months because of its ability to deliver direct on ramp to a company's preferred cloud platform. So when you kind of boil this all together, this graph or this illustration is to be read as the percentage of respondents who rate each of these technologies for its most impact on business outcomes. And moving forward, and as I bring this, the launch and the introduction of the 2021 Accelerating to a Connected Future report of Indian industry to a close, uh, is that there's a very high sense of urgency and understanding and acknowledgement within industry of judicial fiscal prudence to be able to make real the potential of technology's convergence with business strategy towards higher outcomes. Because 56% of all respondents displayed a very high sense of urgency when they spoke about their desire to adapt to as well as adopt and deploy technology within the next 12 months, which is clearly a sign of a fair level of urgency there. And it comes perhaps as no surprise that given the sense and the levels of urgency within industry, pretty much all respondents spoke and highlighted and acknowledged that they will be expending considerable fiscal investments as well as budgets towards technology adoption at an enterprise-wide level, ranging from between 10% to 15%, beg your pardon, of their overall budgets. So clearly, uh, the backdrop of the last 16 odd months of the pandemic infused disruption or the crisis, as one may tend to look at it, has infused a sense of urgency within Indian industry to be able to leverage the potential of technology to drive far, far superior business outcomes as well as move more resilient operating models into fairly uncertain futures. That's pretty much from me for now, folks. The 2021 report on accelerating to a connected future will shortly be available. Stay tuned with us, and we will be soon sharing details of where you could pick up your copy of what is truly a fascinating report of Indian industry sentiments towards technology adoption to drive superior outcomes. That's pretty much from my side. That was your host, Arjun Vishwanathan. Stay tuned with us, and we'll be back with the next segment in just a moment.
Thank you very much, Arjun, for sharing with us the sentiments of the Indian industry on technology adoption to drive superior outcomes. As mentioned, ladies and gentlemen, the report will be available shortly, and our team will be in touch with details of how you can access your copy of the 2021 report on accelerating to a connected future. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we now move forward with a panel discussion. Businesses are not only generating exponentially more data than we did a decade ago, but are using it in many different ways. Most businesses have gone way beyond the need to simply store and protect data. They now need to access it, compare it, analyze it, share it, sell it, and move it fast and frequently. For the past several years, organizations have been moving data applications and development work to the cloud in greater numbers. A trend that has also seen a substantial boost in the new normal and triggered a rise in the remote work and e commerce activities. Let's listen into this interesting conversation between Mr. Srihari Dandapani, Enterprise Architect, Global Transformation Office, Asia Pacific at Dell Technologies, Mr. Amol Venkatesh Pai, Chief Technology Officer from the State Bank of India, and Mr. Arjun Vishwanathan, the Chief Research Officer at Strategy. Over to you, Arjun.
Hello and welcome. I'm Arjun Vishwanathan, and I'm going to be your host today in conversation with two very, very eminent folks from industry to speak about how organizations' cloud today is perhaps set to define and align the transformation across industries. In this, business agility or the need for speed from IT is perhaps one of the most important trigger factors for considering the multi-cloud orchestration. Most industry predictions pretty much are stating that within the next 18 to 24 months, the majority of organizations will tend to rely on a mix of on-prem, dedicated private clouds, several public clouds perhaps, and legacy platforms to meet their infrastructure and data capability needs. To talk to me about all of this, please put your hands together to welcome, in no specific order, Amol Pai, Chief Technology Officer, State Bank of India. Amol, welcome. Privileged to have you with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this invite, and I look forward to for an exciting conversation.
Indeed so. And Srihari Dandapani, Enterprise Solutions Architect, Dell Technologies. Srihari, welcome. Delighted that you could join us.
Thank you so much, Arjun. It's a pleasure to connect back again. And hello, Amol. Looking forward for very good interaction.
Oh, no, absolutely. In fact, gentlemen, while I look at the clock, I do realize that we've got about 30 minutes of what promises to be a truly fascinating conversation. And Amol, without further ado, as they say, I'm going to directly jump to you. In a in a post-crisis situation of sorts that globally as well as in India, industry is going through, the need for scale and agility are pretty much the imperatives for organizations to be able to drive a resurgence as well as create more resilient organizations as they move forward. In such a scenario, what is your view and perspective on perhaps multi-cloud being a brilliant vehicle to drive the trajectory forward in a more resolute manner? Amol Pai.
Uh, so Arjun, very clearly, I think a few things of the few things that have changed since the pandemic has struck. One big change that has become both as a boon and a bane is that we have been asked. I mean, that earlier the technology officers and the technology team would go asking for budgets because they want to modernize, they want to expand, they want to be better and be prepared for the future. But now this has become a case where the management comes running technology team and saying that when are you going to modernize, when are you going to expand, when are you going to be ready for the
Waited so
future?
long for these days.
And the discussions are, sorry.
I said we waited so long for these days, haven't we?
Yes, so that's the boon part. So now there is no hard sell to be. Yes. So now there is no hard sell to be done. Okay. I mean, it's a given. But now comes the bane part. The bane part is that the discussions are always peppered with keywords like microservices, containers, hybrid cloud, cloud adoption, so on and so forth. So now I think AI and ML is passe. It's all about. so I mean, now the technology team is at pains to explain that it doesn't solve the problem always. You really have to take a very pragmatic view in terms of what you want to do, why you want to do. Why a multi-cloud or a multi-cloud hybrid cloud is not the answer to all of your problems. You really have to be very focused in terms of understanding where a hybrid cloud fits in, where a multi hybrid cloud fits in, and those use cases are the ones which have to be adopted. We cannot have a common answer saying that just go adopt a hybrid cloud and the job is done. So that's the other part of the story where you really have to spend time and educate everyone, saying that these are keywords, these are buzzwords, but the proof or the way it is implemented and the problem that it solves is what you have to angle for. So yes, the pandemic has brought about this change. Life has become easy for technologists as far as expansion and digital adoption is concerned. You don't have to do a hard sell now. But on the flip side, the pressure is on all of us to show that the turnaround is happening, the adoption is happening real fast, and the outcomes are shown to everyone in the shortest possible time.
Srihari, my question, therefore, in taking forward what Amol articulated in such a fine manner is the need for organizations today is also to modernize, and Amol kind of touched upon it. Now, in your perspective and from the perspective of Dell Technologies and the innovation that you folks are bringing in from your stables, do you feel somewhere that the multi-cloud orchestration within organizations and business modernization is very tightly coupled and that it is fairly difficult to think of one without the other?
Absolutely right. It's an interconnect. Like Amol rightly said, it no longer it's a hard self technologist. It's rather it's extremely fluidic, and we've been waiting for these times where we can just justify the cost and not the cost. Now it's more imperative of driving the modernization. And if you take from Dell Technologies perspective, now this is a time that we have been exclusively working on engineered solutions. When I say engineered solutions, we are speaking about solutions that can make such customers such as Amol and respective organizations to modernize and transform. And when I say modernize and transform, like I always keep hitching on back onto the statement saying data is the new oil. So it's all about the concentration of how we can process these unstructured data, especially during the time of pandemic. I think we've all realized that there are ton loads of petabytes of data that's been processed from different segmentations, from different verticals, without a greater on-prem footprint out there. So with that data being fluidic into a data center that flows into a data center setup, if you're not going to have an engineered solution which has got self-sustenance as an ability, self-managing as an ability, and self-engineered as an ability, then back the pressure goes to what Amol said, that becomes a pain point. As much as adoption becomes imperative, managing the adoption and proving a point worth of the investment becomes even more compelling factor for people like Amol. That's where Dell Technologies and solutions, what we gather, we engineer together, makes it easier. And before I take a pause in here and give it back to you, Arjun, when I call out an engineering solution by DNA, these engineering solutions are carved out with all possibility of orchestration and automation. So lesser is the footprint of resources, extremely not available in the current situation of lockdowns and pandemic, versus excess is the intelligence of software that orchestrates and automates and process the data. So we want to help customers. Yeah.
I completely couldn't agree more, because that's exactly what I want to bring to you, Amol, which is that, and both of you, I think, have established the fact that there's a clamor going on for adopting newer technologies to drive prospective and potential incremental business outcomes. But my question fundamentally is, in this clamor, would you articulate your perspective on how technology adoption, especially multi-cloud, considering we're speaking about that theme, must be very, very tightly converged to business outcomes? Because technology for the sake of technology cannot be the reason to adopt. It's got to meet specific business outcomes. What's your perspective and view on that, Amol Pai?
Yes. So, I would look at using a particular technology purely from a business outcomes perspective. Okay. I wouldn't say business outcomes per se. I would say outcomes perspective, which can serve either the business or the technology. What do you say? The vision that a company has, or it can serve both. So why would I want to adopt a multi-cloud or a hybrid cloud? There are multiple reasons. So we also will have to look at the transformation that has happened in the entire technology space over the last 2-3 years. Pandemic obviously has adopted the accelerated the adoption of digital technologies by consumers. So now it is easy for me to ask someone to start using an app to use my banking services, as compared to maybe 2 years back, where they would still prefer to go to the branch, meet the person, sit down, chat, and get the job done. Correct.
That's how my
So
father
most
behaves.
exactly. So a lot of the fence sitters. So obviously we have the millennials who adopt it very easily. We have people who fall in the 60 55 plus segment, who are very comfortable with the traditional way of banking, and obviously they do have some limitations, or they are hesitant to adopt the digital way of doing, because the general thought is there is something wrong, or frauds can happen very easily on the digital way. And then there is this whole bunch of fence sitters who are okay to adopt it, but they still prefer to do banking the earlier ways. So those fence sitters are now adopting the digital apps in a very big way, which means my adoption rate is going up very high. Therefore I need to evolve quickly. I need to serve them better. I now have a whole set of demands coming in from these fence sitters, because the millennials had a specific demands, right? They would want offers to come in. They would want certain things to pop up just because they are shopping at a particular place. But these fence sitters traditionally want a better view of how they have done their savings. What is the outcome of the FD or the RD that they have invested in, or what are the options that are available? So the investment patterns are also slightly different. So to cater to these, obviously there are business outcomes. Now, how do I deliver this? Do I require an advanced machine learning model? Does this, because of these fence sitters, is there a surge in volume that comes at a specific time of the day? Is the workload that these people ask for different from the millennials? So which means I have to now start changing my technology architecture to cater to this new workload.
Indeed.
That is the outcome that I'm looking at. And if that outcome requires me to adopt a hybrid cloud, or requires me to adopt a different way of doing it, like, do I want to use GPU as a service, or from my long-term plan, if I bring the GPU in-house and put it up once and for all and I keep using it, I'll take that particular call. So obviously these are the factors that come in, and basis that the decisions will get taken. So hybrid cloud is one of the components, not necessarily the component.
The component. No, that's very fascinating, because really I'm going to come to you with the same question. The journey to resilience, resurgence, value acceleration is a complex one, and there are many vehicles like Amol just mentioned. But in this whole concept, when you look at multi-cloud particularly, how do you see technology being tightly coupled with the whole concept of business outcomes. And what is Dell Technologies' approach to partner organizations across industry, FSI, banking, and so on and so forth, in this entire trajectory?
So I'll take the same hypothesis of what Amol called out, right? Today he kind of very nicely classified different status quo of people wanting to adopt technology, right?
Indeed.
And with this pandemic, I did read a statistics that for an app such as what Amol was referring, which is so handy today, I think it's become so dynamic in nature where you get to see about 20,000 odd accounts being created per day. Amol, correct me if the stats are right. Yep. So the kind of hypothesis what Amol said is dynamic in nature. When I say dynamic in nature, the pattern of adoption of people is extremely versatile. It keeps changing. It keeps accelerating day in and day out. More the word of mouth, more the ease of use of applications. You prevent people from accessing the physical banks and get all jobs done over an app. The adoption rate of these application usage goes high. What happens in the back end, the infrastructure? While the adoption rates goes high, which means the consumption of the resources also goes high. And can the consumption be predicted? Absolutely not in the current stand. It's unpredictable usage pattern of the consumption. So that's where Dell Technologies would love to work very closely with such kind of consumers where a hybrid cloud or a multi-cloud strategy gives the elasticity to meet the demand of the acceleration what Amol was calling out. So for an instance where today, if the adoption of as an app is about 20,000 new accounts that's been opening today, if it becomes 2x tomorrow just because it's proven to be effective, it's proven to be secured, it's proven to be accessible and ease of management like any of consumers like you and I, Arjun, we are also consumers if you think of it, then it gets spread to our through our chain of network. In such a case, an infrastructure that supports Amol Pai as an organization has to be elastic in nature. That's where the intelligence of software that comes in, where when the demand of provisioning of this application goes high, in performance as a requirement, in lesser as latency, to accommodate more users hitting in the same card, then you have a provision of the infrastructure also being automated, where software takes control and then elevate the provisioning of resources. So then what happens? The entire concentration of Amol and team would go focus on the application landscape, forgetting what the infrastructure provisioning is. That is where your multi-cloud or a hybrid cloud becomes imperative, because you have a certain bunch of core applications that could probably run on an on-prem, and you could probably run a certain bunch of applications running on one of the hyperscaler and consume both the resources, running it in a parity and meet the demand. It's all about how you meet the demand and how much of supply is required, especially when the algorithms are extremely erratic and radical in nature.
That's interesting because Amol, that brings me to a fairly nuanced point, which I'd like to bring to you in the in and fashion it as in the form of a question. Multi-cloud by itself, and today where you've got tons of data, both of you kind of spoken fairly eloquently about it. Secondly, the whole concept of a distributed workforce today, because your physical office by and large stands decomposed. When you put it all together, the adoption of technology, of course, is imperative, but what is equally imperative is the ability to perhaps refashion strategy as well as operating models. And therefore, in within the banking sector, and you may not want to speak particularly about SBI, but in a slightly larger fashion, is as line of business leaders seek more efficiencies, seek many, many more metrics that were hitherto perhaps not even evaluated. How is workload transformation and an efficient workload transformation important to be able to drive those levels of efficiencies, especially within the banking sector?
Okay, so see, I mean, from a workload perspective and also from a workforce perspective. Okay, so I would say one more transformation that has happened over the past 2 years is also the skill set of the developers that are available in the market. Okay, one of the reasons why all organizations are looking at hybrid cloud is for the simple reason being that the skill set of resources available in the market, the workforce, as I would call it, they have become polarized would be a very harsh word, I would say, but they are now tending to use technologies which is available off the cloud itself. So if I work with a startup, they bring in the capability to use a AWS or a GCP service as if they have been learning that ever since they were in kindergarten, correct? But if I ask them that, okay, you come to office and you start working in so and so setup that I have over here and do development over here, they suddenly feel claustrophobic.
Indeed.
They are saying, okay, it's a constrained environment. I would rather work with these services which are available on the cloud, even if I'm able to offer the same services within the dev environment of my bank. So this change which is happening right now is also forcing a lot of organizations to take a look at it, because the workforce by itself is also transforming. They are more comfortable with the tools offered on the cloud. They adopt to it very easily, which
Indeed.
means for me to develop, the agility part comes in very easily. And because they understand these technologies well, the maintenance also becomes a lot easier for me. The moment I ask them to port the code to something which I want, that's where the entire hiccups start coming in. The agility suffers, the maintainability suffers, the reaction time suffers. So this is one of the reasons why also we are looking at the hybrid cloud. So one is from the workforce side. Now the second part comes the workload, which comes along with it. So the entire workforce is now natively oriented to the fact that you give me as much data as I want. I will find out what is there in the data and we will create new business models, which means that it is no longer a case of a business requirement coming in and you design something to suit the requirement. The question asked to them is that, okay, you have given me a business requirement, but give me the historical data, because I can find something out of it and tell you how to make your business requirement work better. Okay. So now there is a sudden push to consume more data, to get more data insights, and then create a better business case. So this workload change is also causing us to invest a lot in terms of crunching those data, those numbers. That's where the entire analytics, the GPU related piece, the AI ML piece, which has now become passive, by the way, is now it's a given. I mean, you can no longer claim that you have a AI ML model running. It is a given. So that's where those workloads are coming in, where you have to spend that time so that you get a lot of data insights, and using those data insights, you create a better business use case.
Sri, bringing that to you, what in your view, and what Amol really mentioned was this whole concept of how the transformation of workloads has to be a very strategic and well thought out process. My question to you is to understand your articulation about Dell Technologies' very nuanced approach to industry, to partner industry in transforming workloads in a more intelligent and resilient fashion.
Absolutely right. I'll extend your question, pinning down to the statement what Amol called out, how workloads and workforce goes in tandem. To answer your question, Dell Technologies, we have been expertising in evaluating workloads. When I say evaluating workloads, before we would meet a customer, we would first look at if it's a brownfield as a requirement. We would spend a fair amount of time in diagnosing the data that's been taken as an outcome from the existing installs. Number one. Part two, it is as a result of the diagnosis, we evaluate what is the application behavior pattern as far as the workload is concerned. Because when you size and design a multi-cloud as a solution, we wouldn't want to oversize it or undersize it, but rather we want to optimize it and give the best fitment so that we don't compromise on the performance of the workload. So data evaluation and performance evaluation is one of the prerequisite as far as a fresh requirement is concerned. The second part of how Amol called out saying making use of services could be a hyperscalers where you've got hundreds of services coming from AWS, about 200 odd services coming from Azure. And the best bet is you adopt the services and you build your code and then you move on. While you build your code and then the application still stands as a development, if you don't have a platform which can move the development code to a production seamless, then you will have to go through a disruption. That is where the Dell Technologies offerings on multi-cloud or hybrid cloud gives the agility to customers to move a stateful applications into a container, which is the platform as a service, or vice versa. Move a container into a stateful applications. So we love to offer a platform as part of the multi-cloud strategy, giving access to two sets of customers within an organization. One is developers who has direct access to radically change this nature and state of an application from a developer into production or bring it back to Q&A, and also give the access to an IT administrator who still has control of the platform, who can still put certain policies and control. And last bit of it is like how you started the conversation, Arjun, moving the data into a distributed style, right? We spoke about workforce and workload, and it depends on where you want to move your workforce and workload. And that's where your distributed architecture comes forth. Again, with Dell Technologies offering, we have platforms and engineered solutions that will help customers to move the data from one state to another, could be a stateful state to a stateless state, from one zone to another zone, which could be from core to cloud to edge. So it's a 3-zone connectivity where you want to repatriate the data from a public hyperscaler to on-prem, be a guest. You want to extend into a remote branch office as a distributed workforce, be a guest. You want to put in both the workload into a centralized location, or even could be a colo. That's where you have independent single management platform, which is the secret sauce of a multi-cloud, manages the movement of the workload across all three zones.
That's very interesting because, gentlemen, between Amol and Srihari, both of you have very, very finely articulated the benefits and, well, clearly the clear and present availability of technology to be able to garner the kind of benefits that organizations would want or outcomes. But Amol, I must come to you. Now, you at State Bank of India, you've been early adopters of technology. In fact, you've been one of the earliest adopters of technology. For a lot of organizations and for this audience that's tuning in with us today, this journey, while it is certainly fascinating and promises multiple benefits, is also a complex one. Amol, in your experience as a practitioner, somebody who's neck deep in technology, what is your essential guidance to IT practitioners, senior leaders on how to even approach this journey, and what are those pitfalls to avoid?
So so there are many things to be looked at, but I would just touch upon a couple of them, which is fairly important. It is generally whenever we get into a conversation, say that why don't you adopt the cloud, and then they say get a cloud expert. Now this is a problem because there is nothing called as a cloud expert. A cloud is not a small piece of hardware or software lying somewhere. A cloud is a massive setup with a lot of components to it, each component deserving its own attention and treatment and importance. Correct. So even if you are looking at a cloud, you still require a network engineer, you still require a security expert, you require a person who understands each of the components that are offered in the cloud. You require a person who knows how to use which component, right? Which component should be adopted at what point in time? What should be a development zone? What should be a UAT zone? What should be a production zone? Whether you require equal amount of security and monitoring on each of the zones, or whether you require it only from a production perspective. Then the last part that is of importance is, and that is something which is not generally thought of upfront, is the way the billings happen. Because ultimately it is no longer buy it once and then put it to use, and then you don't have to care how it is getting used, right? Most of the times how it is getting used is an afterthought. Here you have to factor in this point right at the start, how and what is getting used, because ultimately you get a bill at the end of the month, right? So all these points have to be put together when you are thinking of going to the cloud. That is point number one. Point number two is that if you are doing a multi-cloud hybrid cloud, what you are essentially doing is that you are having a multi-talent workforce.
Indeed.
So from a continuity perspective, you will have to start thinking that, is it really viable for you to have so much of technology variation in the organization? Because all said and done, you can have a multi-cloud hybrid cloud, but you cannot have multiples of resources to manage it. You still have the same budget, you may be getting a slightly wider budget, but the manpower is something which has to be thought through. So these are the two vital elements I believe has to be thought through upfront whenever you do a cloud adoption. And then the third part that comes in is that when you are doing a cloud adoption also, you will be bringing in a lot of new technologies to manage it, because the same traditional way of managing it doesn't apply. So obviously, again, the same question of skill set, the same question of having the expertise and the depth of understanding for adopting it comes in. So these are the 3 points I would say, please look out for them. And then obviously the benefits are there. It is just that you have to be really, really aware of these points, and then you take a very cautious call, and the benefits will keep coming in.
Yeah, clearly has to be a very well thought out decision and something that is well blueprinted at its very core. But gentlemen, I do have a view on the clock, and I do know that you've got schedules ahead. Srihari Dandapani, I come to you. Therefore, as we taper down this fascinating conversation into understanding, because last year, September last year, in fact, we heard Michael Dell globally talk about the kind of technologies that would help accelerate industries value orientation. And of course, one of the big pegs there was multi-cloud orchestration within organizations. Therefore, Srihari, my question is, what is the innovation that Indian industry, and I speak in a very considered manner for Indian industry, that we could expect from Dell's labs to be able to power Indian industry into higher levels of outcomes, greater resilience, and well, finally, value orientation and the acceleration at its very core. What is your view on the innovation that Dell is expected to bring to the table?
So the ton loads in the list, like you rightly said, in Dell Tech world, Michael Dell listed out a load of things. Um, so Dell's vision today is more strategic towards a hybrid cloud model, more than a multi-cloud. It's a hybrid cloud model, and the reason being is one which Amol already called out: acquisition of skills, managing different vendors, and different types of workforce. So rather than to have subscription across multiple hyperscalers, it's good to have a hybrid cloud where you have a part of your setup close to your chest, keeping data close to your chest. With all the RBA regulations that you have, and even HIPAA regulations that you have for healthcare, you got to localize your data. So which means there is a point of on-premise requirement, and rest of it can float on a hyperscaler. So one of the key strategies of accelerating Indian industries with Dell as a strategy is a hybrid cloud strategy. The second bit of it is we have been focusing on a lot of managed services that's coming to help customers. When I say managed services, like again, to give a hypothesis where you need to acquire skills. Cloud does not become a destination when a company organization takes a call. Now we hear that organizations are parking two different kind of budgets. One is an infrastructure budget, other is a cloud budget itself. So when you have a cloud budget, an organization wouldn't tend to think that this is my destination, but rather it's an operating model. So when you speak about an operating model, there's a ton loads of operational efficiency that you'll have to bring in, and only then you can justify the return of investment as a cost. So now Dell's strategy is to bring solutions, which is more of a managed services. When I say managed services, in two aspects. One, managing the services of infrastructure as a play at your site or at a colo, where Dell can pick up the bags and then monitor and manage and automate and orchestrate, provide consulting services, and etc., leaving the customers to handle only application landscape. And second bit of it, which Amol closed the conversation saying the justifying cost, the cost aspect, Dell is starting to look up and govern these cost aspects, slightly drifting away from a capex based model to a opex based model. But that does not land us to say Dell also has become a hyperscaler. Apparently not. Dell's strategies of bringing of a hybrid cloud is still investing on a capex based infrastructure at customer site, but build on pay as you grow or pay as you build, right? So
That's very well articulated.
we are wanting to give all the abilities or what a public cloud can deliver in aspects of efficiency, the way it's charged back and build back, elasticity, but at the cost of how a customer would have landed up in the on-prem landing zone. So in short and summary, Dell's strategy is to bring both the worlds together, and that's what Dell's hybrid cloud is all about.
Well, fantastic, gentlemen. With that, much as this has been fascinating for me personally, and I'm sure for the audience, is what we pretty much have time for. Amol Pai, thank you so much. Truly a privilege to have spoken with you. Thank you so much. And Srihari Dandapani,
Thank you very much.
thank
Thank
you,
you, Sri.
Sri. It was delightful speaking with you.
Thank you. Likewise. It was a pleasure indeed.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That was I, Arjun Vishwanathan, in conversation with Amol Pai and Srihari Dandapani about aspects on multi-cloud. Stay tuned with us and we'll be back with the next segment in just a moment.
Thank you very much, Srihari, Amol, and Arjun. What an insightful conversation. Hearing our speakers on the panel, we can all concur that more than ever, organizations are launching or expanding their multi cloud strategies as they navigate through their digital transformation journeys. The business and IT strategies now see a lot of synergies. It's also fair to say, like Amol pointed out, that transformation of workloads and workforce now goes hand in hand, and the deft use of automation and orchestration is going to be the next big necessity in an organization's hybrid and multi cloud strategy. With that, ladies and gentlemen, let's now move forward to our next panel discussion. As organizations strive to become more agile to keep pace with increasing business demands, many IT departments are turning to software defined data centers to accelerate the delivery of consistent data services. The widespread appeal of software defined data centers comes from its ability to offer greater flexibility, cost efficiency, speed, and consistency compared to traditional IT infrastructure. Let's hear views from our experts on the next panel. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Kunal Dhingra, Global Head IT at Larsen& Toubro Infotech, Mr. Vinay Bhatt, the Director, Networking and Security at VMware India, and our moderator for the session, Mr. Ashwini Mishra, the Business Technology Editor at Strategic. Over to you, Ashwini.
Hello and welcome to this segment on Accelerating to a Connected Future, brought to you on behalf of Strateging, Dell Technologies, and VMware. I am Ashwini Mishra, editor at Strateging, and in this session, we will try to gain insights on how, in the long lineage of technology innovations, the introduction of software-defined data center or software-defined enterprise is looking to transform the way IT infrastructures are designed and managed. It is my privilege to host two eminent senior IT leaders from the industry who have joined us for this conversation. Please join me to welcome Kunal Dhingra, Senior Director IT at Larsen& Toubro Infotech Limited. Welcome, Kunal. Glad to have you for this session and thank you for taking out time.
Glad to be part of this.
We have with us Vinay Bhatt, Director Networking and Security at VMware. Welcome, Vinay. Really nice of you to join this conversation.
Thank you, Ashwini. Likewise.
Right. Look forward to some interesting insights from both of you. The ongoing crisis changed the business landscape overnight, forcing business technology leaders to lead in new ways and rethink how they connect with their employees and consumers. The future of work has arrived early. We've been seeing remote work has changed everything about how workforces communicate, collaborate, and stay productive. In parallel, we are also witnessing accelerating business demands. This is driving rapid digital transformation within organizations. There is a massive push for business and IT to align around applications to deliver modern customer engagement. To keep up, IT teams need to deliver a digital infrastructure that supports the modern application at all times and from anywhere. What was manual can now be automated. What was bound to be dedicated IT resources can be easily migrated. And what forced as a single vendor strategy has now become a best buy. And we've also seen the evolution from virtualization to DevOps to containers to a microservices architecture, which is now pointing to the inevitability of the software-defined data center. Let's begin with you, Kunal. How do you see the importance of software-defined data center in the present scheme of things? How can enterprises drive agility and greater control with the deployment of a software-defined data center?
So what I would say is there used to be a time, maybe a couple of years back, where IT used to be called enabler. Pandemic hit, IT became essential.
Right.
This was first time we heard that we are part of essential commodity segment, and this has been declared by government of India.
True.
Same way,
Yes.
software defined data center, software defined network used to be a good to have before pandemic hit, and from good to have it kind of diverged towards must have, and more these lockdown pandemic situations and continuous work from home is increasing. It has almost come to the verge of being an essential need.
Mhm.
Now it's no more that I can postpone it for another year. As a
Right.
strategy, we are saying, okay, let us first do the basic layer, let us fix all our component layer on network, or maybe get in more hardware on the data center, or move few things on cloud, and then we'll traverse towards software defined network. What has happened in last 6 months specifically, when the second wave of COVID hit,
Right.
earlier there was a plan we would start from this financial year. Now nobody knows which financial year companies would start. Maybe there would be a wave third, and after that there may be a wave four, and we have been now given a target. Just 60 days, a project which was supposed to be 60 months, maybe do something in
Right.
60 days.
Right. Right.
The idea is you use the resources that you have, go and figure out what you can reconfigure and re-strategize. All the resources that were supposed to be planned for some other projects have been pulled in, saying, now this is the burning need. You give me a
Mhm.
laptop and you make sure my resource goes on the network segment where he is supposed to go, not anywhere else. Now standard
Right.
VPNs don't work.
Right.
A VPN into enterprise is an old story. Now a customer or a consumer or an employee today wants a VPN direct into its own ODC.
True.
So I think it is accelerated to a limit that IT guys are going crazy.
The credibility of IT organization is out there for everyone to see. But rightly put, when you said, from good to have to must have, and a project that would take 6 months is needs to be delivered in 60 days. So that's the urgency that we are witnessing. VMware has been a strong believer of software defined enterprise, and that is essential to create the foundation of for digital transformation. How do you see software defined data centers enabling IT assets and IT organizations to operate and change at the speed of business? And more importantly, what are some of the key considerations for enterprises to determine whether the organization is ready?
So, Ashwini, like Kunal mentioned, right? I think every organization is ready today for a software-defined data center. If you don't do it now, I think gone are the days when there's to really be priorities. But today is the time. Now is the time when you really need to embrace a technology like software-defined data center. And the reason is, like Kunal mentioned, there are these projects that have been thrown at you at a very lightning speed, and then the resources that are thrown at you are not so many. So, now you have to do a much more in the given period of time. And all of that is only possible when you have agility and automation through software-defined data center, right?
Right.
And the pandemic, the COVID situation also was a blessing in disguise because the hardware deliveries became that much more difficult for them to arrive at your center, which
True.
meant you had to repurpose some of the infrastructure which is lying with you in a more intelligent manner. And the only way that could happen was through software-defined data center. So
Right.
software-defined data center is something that is a need of the hour. And VMware again has been pioneer of virtualization and abstraction. So VMware does have a foray into that, and we are pioneers when it comes to software-defined data center. In fact, so much so that we have given the same platform of software-defined data centers that our customer use within their data center to public cloud providers. Most of the hyperscalers that we talk about, Amazon, AWS, Google, Oracle, IBM, they
Right.
are certified run to run to run the same platform. The advantage, some of the advantages our customers get is the choice of public cloud. Tomorrow, if they have to migrate to public cloud providers, they have a choice of any public cloud that they can migrate without having to refactor. The only
Mhm.
advantage that they get by VMware certifying my SDDC platform into these hyperscalers is our customers did not refactor, they did not migrate, they did not
Migrate.
import. Yeah, so that's the advantage. But yeah, now is the time for software defined data center, Ashwin.
Right. So very interesting. So both of you have sounded on a very positive note. So while we're talking of software-defined data center, this is the entire data center that is virtualized. It's not just the servers, where many companies, I'm sure, have made a lot of progress. But the other two traditional stacks of storage and networking are virtualized as well. Now, part of the strategy behind a software-defined data center is also to democratize the power of fast and flexible IT. Uh, Kunal, what are some of the measurable benefits to organizations while they orchestrate and move toward a software-defined enterprise? Since you have started on that journey.
I would just give a couple of examples of what is typical pain for an organization like us, which is an ITES company. Majority of work a ITES company does is in a form of a ODC,
Mhm.
which is nothing but some people foreign client co-located at your place.
Right.
Bigger the organization grows, you expect more number of logos. More number of logos, you would expect those logos to force you to create a DR strategy.
Right. Right.
Higher is the DR strategy, then you would have more number of those co-located small ODCs. In last 1.5 year, a person which used to join in Bangalore, used to be a Bangalore employee, go and sit as an ODC A for client XYZ, or a
Right.
person who was supposed to join in Chennai in ODC B for a client ABC, are no more joining in Bangalore and Chennai. They are maybe joining in Imphal, or maybe somebody is joining in Ladakh, or
Mhm.
maybe somebody who was working at that place has gone to his hometown, which is Kanyakumari. Now, what do we do? If performance cannot dip, clients have taken a call that we would not make any further investment because we have signed a deal with you as a partner or a vendor.
You
You
figure
need to
it
take,
out. Right.
you go and figure it out. Now,
Right.
I don't have a magic wand that I would say boom, 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 and all is done. So it has suddenly become no more of a need of ours. It has just become a distress
Necessity.
need.
Right.
It's just become a necessity, distress need for a guy which has to be productive. Earlier, when it used to be person sitting in a ODC, we used to enable somebody within 48 hours with all the accesses and giving him a asset. Asset used to be fixed inside the ODC. Asset cannot go out. So even if all the fixed logistics was always ready, for somebody to get enabled, it used to take 48 hours because you need to take client permission, get his accesses done, your access, client access. Now, expectation is that enablement has to happen in first 4 hours for person joining
Right.
because he
Right.
is joining at his home. He is sitting at his luxury. If you don't enable him in first 4 hours, you do not know whether the person would have a second offer and he'll go and start working with somebody else.
Somewhere else. Right.
So now, if I have to earn faster as an organization, if you have to make business run faster, you need to use all these technologies, which could be VMware on virtualization, which could be again VMware NSX or Cisco's ACI on the network layer, which you just spoke. Nowadays, nobody even talks about storage. People are saying just go and buy hyper-converged environment, implement it, done and dusted, everything. Kill those
Right.
8 different layers of infrastructure just to enable something on cloud.
No.
Vinay said use VMware because you could traverse between multiple public clouds. Why multiple public clouds? Today I would have a environment sitting on a public cloud, but business-wise it is not making sense. It is taking hell lot of money. I would rather go and buy an HCI environment and pull that infrastructure down back on my private cloud and
Right.
create something which is on-prem because that's a dev and test. or vice versa.
Sure.
If I need some hyperscaling of some environment because business is again growing and hyperscaling is needed, I would rather move it on public cloud. So I definitely need a at a data center layer a software environment where I can pull in resources, migrate resources from data center A to data center B. I also need it at a network layer so that I can enable my users faster.
Yes. True, true. That makes a lot of sense. So you rightly said, Kunal. One is to earn faster and move fast with a very stable IT infrastructure, and there's a lot of flexibility that needs within the IT systems to both incorporate new technologies, have new data sources, and new external services as well. Vinay, so picking up from where Kunal said, the strategy is to democratize the power of fast and flexible IT. Your views?
No, absolutely, Ashwini. And I think one point where Kunal, mentioned is very, very critical is about attracting new talent, right? I think
Right.
while you, me, everybody, and I've hired few guys in my team during this pandemic situation, and I've not been able to meet them in person. Typically, you'd have met him in person, known how the person is, getting a little comfortable with it, and then hire them on in your team. But these days, we are all hiring online. We are all hiring in Zoom meetings like this. People need to become comfortable with the fact that your whole life, technology and work is all entangled. It's all jumbled up, and at the same time how much comfort you can give to the employees who come on
Employees.
board is very, very important, and that they'll help you to hire new talent and retain good talent. So that's clearly that's one thing that are happening. And like Kunal said, right, I think today we don't know if somebody is joining you from Imphal or Ladakh or Delhi or Bombay or Bangalore, which also means there is a lot of vulnerabilities and security challenges that we can actually open to. You don't know what network somebody is joining your applications and accessing your applications and data. You don't know
Right.
what is the security posture of the device, because at earlier days the device was actually given by the company. Even now the company is trying to ship the devices to people's homes, which is certified and having the list of software that is certified. But what if there is some rogue or mal software that sits on that laptop and desktop and that can really get an access into your infrastructure? So security is something that's become very, very paramount importance in the current situation. But
So
flexibility
my next
also
question was around it, Vinay. So since you've touched upon it, so do we see software-defined data centers ensuring that this overall security is well addressed?
the business unit that I represent, Ashwani, which is the network and security view for VMware India. Our objective has been to have the security in form of smaller chunks and to take it closer towards the source instead of keeping it centrally.
Centrally, right?
Like Kunal mentioned, now VPN is gone are the days where actually people would reward and implement VPN. Today people are implementing security which is smaller and easier to implement and closer towards the source, because the moment I see a malware, I see a hack, I see a compromise, I need to stop it then and there. There is a nice term called zero trust network architecture, right?
Right.
That zero trust network architecture can only be deployed or implemented if you have software defined network and security. So anywhere, right, you're running your applications and data into desktops, into your data center, into public clouds, anywhere, the security components runs as smaller bits and keeps checking for the security posture at every point of time from a ZTNA perspective, from a zero trust network architecture perspective. And the moment there is a compromise, the moment there is an anomaly, the moment there is a hack kind of an environment, there is score that is given to that activity, and the moment the certain score or the certain level thresholds, it is blocked, it is stopped. So which means it helps you to get zero trust network architecture again, because
Right.
the network needs to get access from everywhere, right? Today you don't have a choice, and that's why ZTNA again becomes important. And the best way of implementing ZTNA is software defined network and security.
Right. Kunal, any views or points that you would want to address around the security piece?
I think Vinay pretty much summed up uh, everything around this. You may call it zero trust, you may call it foolproof, you may call it foolproof, you may use any terminology to make it easier for somebody to understand. But until unless you have, and taking the liberty of saying, not only software defined data center,
Mhm.
until you would have end-to-end software-defined network,
Networks, right?
you cannot ever achieve zero trust.
Yeah.
So you have a data center component, you have a LAN component, you would have a WAN component. Unless all three components come together and give you that comfort that there is no data leakage going east west or no data leakage north south, so that
Mhm.
you have a control of not only network plane, also a data plane.
Okay, true.
Not only data plane, network plane, also the physical layer. Your laptops, desktops, you may go and put as many softwares you want. You may go and put DLPs of the word, you may go and put EDRs of the word. You will not be able to stop the infection.
So
The
that's
hackers
that's
or
yeah.
people who are developing all these are far smarter than any of us. If we are thinking security 10 steps ahead, maybe they are already 100 steps ahead than us. So we are always in a catch up game. The only way we can maybe create some hindrance for them is put some software defined architecture in front of them. Hey, if you want to crack it, okay, go and play with some software layer first and then come reach me. But it is only possible if you use all the pieces of puzzle. If you want to do
Mhm.
it at one layer, God bless you.
Very well put. We've also seen business resilience, becoming a key to survival. Kunal. In the face of rapidly changing IT, cyber threat, you touched upon the subject as well, and regulatory environments. Uh, how effective would a software-defined enterprise strategy address the story around building a strong, resilient business?
Now, resiliency is a word which is very, very vast if you just think over it. Now, are you talking about business resiliency in terms of your bounce back capabilities, or you're talking about business resiliency in terms of can it enable maybe a multifold growth at a time? All of these, if you put together and say, I need, in a Hindi word, maybe I need to cook a khichdi, which need to
Mhm.
have some grains, which need to have rice, which would have some spices, everything all together, and my business would become resilient. Now, I need to have a faster growth, software defined environment, software defined network would be one of the factor to support you. I
Right.
need to enable a bounce back capacity. Let's say I'm hit, God forbid, an organization get hit with some kind of a malware, ransomware, or some kind of a threat. You have been hacked. How can I bounce back? I cannot say, Abhi, okay, I've been hit. Okay, I'll go low. I'll go in the lumber. I'll start formatting everything and I'll reconfigure everything from scratch. Not possible.
Mhm.
You need
Okay.
to cut it and bounce back from there. Now, again, software defined network can definitely trigger. You can, in a span of maybe few hours, either spin up new VMs or create a boundary, create a layer of a network that no traffic would flow further down from here. So I don't foresee any further data leakage or data
Leakage.
threats going. So that would help you in terms of your resiliency on that scale. Now, can I implement more security? Yes, of course, you can implement more security with your software defined environment. So resiliency, if it is required, I would not say it's a magic pill, but your software defined environment, software defined network, software defined data center is definitely one of the pill that would help you.
Mhm. And I'm sure it also helps you transcend the rigid constraints of the old hardware-centric model, Kunal.
Of
So,
course, of course,
right.
because you can anytime reconfigure or maybe respin up or maybe migrate because everything is sitting at a software layer.
So, right.
Dependency on a hardware is getting reduced day by day.
Vinay, any thoughts from you?
No, I think I completely agree with Kunal, Ashwini. I think the flexibility that you get, right, with the software environment or with the software construct, the way you can configure, the way you can spin new network segments, the way you can write those network and firewall security rules in terms of who can travel at which segment, and then what even so much so that you can actually gone are those days where people really wrote firewall rules which were IP based. Today it is all
Right.
contextual, right? It is all contextual. It is written for a container based applications. There are different kind of rules that are written for a VM kind of applications. The firewall rules are different, and they're all contextual, which means they're depending on what kind of application it is, at what layer it is, whether it is a dev, test, production, DR, and accordingly the rules are applied. It's not IP address anymore because those can change, and tomorrow the VM could be into your private cloud, which is in your data center, or tomorrow the VM can actually be in a public cloud in a hyperscaler. So the
Mhm.
context of that VM will not change. It will still be the same production VM. It will still be the same application which it will cater to. The context will remain same, and that is why the firewall or the security policies are applied on the context. So security, landscape is definitely changing. And again, from a VMware perspective, right, while we may not be known as a significant security player, but we have a formidable, revenue that we take from our network security portfolio for VMware globally, and we are really investing heavily. We've acquired few companies in past. We've acquired companies like Carbon Black, like Last Line, like Hello
Right.
Cloud, and so on and so forth. And we've really built quite a formidable network and security platform. Now, while I speak from my home, I have Velo Cloud in my house. It serves two purposes. One is it balances the link, so the Zoom calls are really smooth. And second
Mhm.
is any application that I access on my home broadband, which is some third-party broadband, it is always under security policy. So I cannot access anything else which is not allowed by my company, even if I'm sitting at home. Everything that I access from an application and data perspective is all from a security perspective. It is one of the components of ZTNA from a VMware's solution perspective.
A final question to you, Kunal. I guess we are approaching a cutoff time. In organizations' quest to craft the intelligent enterprises of tomorrow, how should organizations approach the journey of orchestrating a software-defined enterprise, or moving to, or the best practices that would be needed to move to a software-defined kind of an environment?
Just don't do it for the sake of doing it. Go and write
Right,
your
right.
business case clearly. Go and write your use cases clearly. I have at least spoken to four or five of my friends, and four or five of people who I know in different organizations who are going and investing in software defined network and software defined architecture, where their whole organization is just a flat organization. They would
Right.
go and invest crores of Indian rupees, but will not get the benefit out of it. They can still survive just by putting a couple of firewalls at different layers and done and dusted. Whereas for our organizations where their structure, the way their data is being traversed, the way their infrastructure is being designed, and with the way they get regulatory approval, all those need to be clearly articulated, and accordingly your software defined journey has to be written. It's
Right.
not one page, it's a web series. It's not one episode. You have to continuously write those web series episodes. Maybe it would be 10 episodes, or maybe it would be 20 episodes, but you cannot do it at one go.
Very well captured, and the analogy that you have given really fits in very well with this one. Final question to you, Vinay. What innovation can enterprises expect from VMware in the months to come? So it's specifically around software-defined enterprise that can help the industry accelerate its journey to agility and greater control.
Yeah. I think what Kunal mentioned, and I really want to emphasize what he mentioned, right? Do not go to implement software-defined enterprise in your enterprise, but look at what your business demands. Look at what your business wants. Look at what your IT wants, and then kind of map it with what IT can deliver. So with that, what we are doing is SASE is something which is a flavor that everybody is talking. VMware always had the components to build a SASE, which is a secure access service edge kind of a framework, which is again one of the layers of ZTNA, right?
Mhm.
Well, for a zero touch network, and like Kunal mentioned, there is WAN, there is LAN, there is desktop, and so on and so forth. But when it typically comes to a WAN network, SASE is one of the aspect that helps you implement ZTNA. SASE is something that VMware is investing heavily. While we had all the building blocks, which means we had a VDI platform from an infrastructure perspective, we have SD-WAN technology from a from a WAN perspective, we had security components which were both network and security for both LAN and WAN perspective. We have integrated in a manner where we can give our customers a pure SASE experience. Because today the edges, right? Gone are those days where the edges were defined. Today the edges can actually be a coffee shop or a home or a laptop, desktop, or an iPad. So whenever there is traffic that is getting generated from such edges, how do you really secure it and then get it within your data center or give them access to your applications and data? And then again, the applications and data can be on both public cloud as well as private cloud. And SASE, how that SASE can be that connection broker in between to be able to check for security postures and allow those checks. So that's something, Shuni, we are investing really, really heavily, and we will be coming up with SASE POPs in India very soon. We've already started a journey of coming up with SASE POPs globally. I think Q4 timeframe, Q4 to Q1 timeframe next year is when you will see us implementing SASE in India as well.
Great, great. Look forward to that as well, Vinay. Right. Thank you, Kunal, Vinay, for sharing your views. It was really a pleasure interacting with both of you. I'll quickly summarize. One thing that has very clearly emerged from this conversation is the inevitability of switching from a traditional data center to a software-defined data center. As platforms like IT as a service emerge as the new normal. For enterprises, software-defined data centers would be ultimately an investment in business agility and business innovation. It does look that clinging to the idea of a hardware-defined data center might leave you at a competitive disadvantage in more ways than one. That's all from this session. A gentle reminder to fill in the feedback forms. The suggestions and feedback are valuable to us. Thank you for watching and stay tuned.
Thank you very much, Kunal, Vinay, and Ashwini. That was an engaging conversation. It does look like, from the views of our panel, that software defined data center is the best data center architecture available for IT organizations that are looking to propel themselves forward. So, whether enterprises are looking to accelerate their app delivery or serve as a strategic partner to business, software defined data center is the path to get there. With a software defined approach, one can increase the business value of their existing IT assets by proper monitoring and managing them via software, which is inherently faster and more flexible than hardware. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the conclusion of the proceedings for today's webinar and hope that the sessions have been both fruitful and insightful for all of you. We also request you to spare a few moments of your time and fill in the feedback form. Your feedback is invaluable to us as it helps us enhance the content, structure, and delivery of our conferences. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank all of you for joining us today on behalf of Dell Technologies, Intel, and Strategy. Ladies and gentlemen, we look forward to seeing you soon. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy.